could be very true. Anyhow, um, once a week I come in here and I kind of talk about the breakdown on democracy docket, right? And this week, well, here's what's happened. So I'm going to give you all the stories that came out, right? So let's start with the first one, okay? There is 2, 3, 10 stories this week, 10 brief stories that we're going to talk about in a rundown, okay? So let's go. It's been 4 years since Ketanji Jackson Brown was confirmed to the Supreme Court, and she made history. She's the first Black woman to serve as a justice on the highest court in the land. And she got there with a fight. That confirmation hearing, brutal. She faced questions that no other nominee has ever faced. That's right. But she sat there, composed, brilliant, and she won. 4 years later, she is still making history, and every single term. That's right. If you don't know this, that's why we need to learn. This is why I bring this information to you once a week with the Democracy Docket. So here goes the next one. Breaking. There's a case at the Supreme Court right now about whether a candidate can be kicked off a primary ballot because he's not a real Republican. I think this is perfect. Here's what happened. Sam Rona filed to run Ohio's Republican primary for Congress. Republicans on the election board said, nope, he lied about being a Republican. A federal judge agreed and cleared the way to remove him. And now he's taking and asking the Supreme Court to step in. His argument, let Republican voters decide if he's a Republican enough. The court has to respond by Friday of last week. I don't have the answer, but I will look for it and let you know. Okay, this is ballot access law in real time. So let's keep it going. A federal appeals court just ruled that Iowa's book ban in school libraries is unconstitutional. What does that mean? Iowa can ban sexually explicit books from school libraries. Iowa can limit teachers on how they discuss LGBTQ community topics. The Eighth Circuit said school librarians or libraries are a part of school curriculum, so the school controls the content. This covers 8 Midwestern states. And the reasoning? It could spread. In California, we have strong protections, but federal law can override state law. So let's keep up to date when it comes to this. Followed by, the DOJ just called a 50-year-old law unconstitutional, a law that preserves the White House to preserve presidential records. And this, historians are suing to stop them. Here's the breakdown. Presidential records, the Act of 1978, requires all White House records to be preserved. Trump's DOJ released the memo calling it illegal. Historians and American oversights are fighting back in federal court. They're citing a 1977 Supreme Court case that upheld similar protections. If the White House can destroy records, history becomes whatever they say. Is this authoritarianism? Erase the past? Here's the next one. Did you know there were Black legal giants who should have been on the Supreme Court decades before Thurmond Marshall? 3 names you need to know. William Hastie, the first Black federal appeals judge, was on the JFK SCOTUS shortlist, blocked by Chief Justice Earl Warner himself. Sportswood Robinson III worked with Marshall on Brown versus Board of Education, became chief judge on the DC Circuit. Charles Hamilton Houston, the architect of dismantling separate but equal, died in 1950, 4 years before Brown. But Marshall said, we wouldn't have a place if Charlie hadn't laid the groundwork. History didn't start with Thurgood Marshall, but it was built by people who came before him. Breaking, we all know what happened to Pam Bondi, right? So Pam Bondi is no longer the Attorney General in the United States. And there's more happening at the DOJ this week. Steve Bannon's cases get sent back to lower courts. The Chile's decision on conversion therapy is now being called nonpartisan. The Attorney General is the top law enforcement officer in the country. Every time there's a change at the DOJ, it affects immigration enforcement, civil rights cases, and who gets prosecuted and who doesn't. Let's go to the next case. Political history lesson. Democrats could have had a moderate on the Supreme Court in 2005, and they blew it. Here's what happened. George W. Bush nominated Harriet Miers in the Supreme Court. Miers was not a conservative legal activist. She was a centrist. Conservative activists pushed hard to kill her nomination. Democrats didn't defend her. Bush withdrew the nomination, and Samuel Alito got the seat instead. That's slippery slime. Alito went on to write the Dobbs decision overturning Roe versus Wade. Politics, it's always chess, but sometimes you don't realize the move you missed until 20 years later. And that's what happened with that one. On to the next one. Hot take on the Supreme Court and the 14th Amendment and Citizenship Clause should not be read as frozen in time. That's the argument being made in a new SCOTUS column by Peterson in response to last week's oral argument over Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. Here's a breakdown. Trump signed an EO trying to limit who gets birthright citizenship. Cecilia Wang argued against SCOTUS last week. Patterson pushes back. He says the 14th Amendment can be interpreted with evolving context. For the communities, this can be harsh. Trashy, thank you for telling me to shut up. Super. If you don't like it here, you can go away. Nobody's keeping you here, okay? Let's go to the next one. Did you know that the Supreme Court justice traveled the world? And do you know who pays for their security? A watchdog called Fix the Court just got FOIA documents from the State Department showing Justice Roberts, Kagan, and Breyer visited Canada in 2023. Justice Gorsuch and Kagan went to France in 2024. Multiple security agents and U.S. foreigners are coordinating to protect them. I never knew that. It's good to know new things, right? The Supreme Court has zero public ethic rules. No mandatory disclosures, no binding code, no conduct until recently. And even then, when enforcement is weak, we pay for the security. We deserve to know how they spend our tax dollars. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. This is the last of Democracy Docket of this week, and we will be back next week with more on Democracy Docket. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. And for all of those who told me to shut up, have a fabulous day.